Hey there everybody, welcome to part 2 of this video. Now, in the previous video I actually mentioned that the sine, cosine, or tangent, or any trig function, when it has an angle inside of it, it actually is going to be the same every single time. For instance, if you look at this, it says sine of 30 equals 1/2. Sine of 30 will actually always equal 1/2. Same thing with sine of 60 degrees. That's always going to equal square root of 3 over 2. Cosine of 30 degrees is going to be square root of 3 over 2 as well. And then cosine of 60 degrees is going to be equal to 1/2. This whole table of functions here will always happen. Now, I don't want you to get afraid of this table. This is not any mathematics that you necessarily need to do. There would be ways of figuring out these values, but in all honesty, what you need to do with this table is really remember how to make it potentially, or just have it written down for later. Now, there are some more values in this table. We're going to get to an extended table coming up here pretty soon, but I want to let you know how to use these values in particular right here. Let's go on to example 3, and I'll show you exactly what you can do with this. Now, I just scrolled down to example 3 here, and it says use trigonometric functions to find the value of x. Round to the nearest tenth if necessary. The length of the hypotenuse is 8. The missing measure for the side adjacent to angle 30. Use the cosine function. So if we look at the triangle right over here, it says we have a hypotenuse of 8, and the side that is adjacent to 30 is the side that we're trying to find. So let's think about what we're trying to do here. We're trying to find a side that is adjacent, and we're using the hypotenuse. What deals with adjacent and hypotenuse? That is the question that you need to ask, because those are the two things that we are using here. So let us look at our SOHCAHTOA. That is what this comes down to again. SOH, so, CAH, ka, TOA, TOA. So if we pay attention, we're trying to find the adjacent side and the hypotenuse. Which one is that one? Well, sine deals with opposite and hypotenuse, and tangent deals with opposite and adjacent. But cosine deals with adjacent and hypotenuse. So that's the one that we want to use here. So let's use cosine. Now I want to write this down really quick. We know that cosine of theta, or our angle, is going to equal the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So let's fill those things in. Now, so far, we haven't actually filled in the theta. But if you look there, we have an answer for what our theta is. It is 30 degrees. So let's fill that in. Let's say cosine of 30 degrees. All right. Now, in your calculator, if you ever type in cosine of 30 degrees, you would just have to make sure that you just type in 30. There is a way to make sure your calculator is in degrees rather than radians, but that will be for later. Right now, you're typing in cosine of 30. And now this is going to equal adjacent over the hypotenuse. Let's see, what was our adjacent? Well, our adjacent was x. We can see our adjacent is right over here. And let's label that really quick. We're going to say A, D, J. And just for good measure, I'm going to label this as H, Y, P, our hypotenuse as well. So let's throw this in. This is going to be X, because that's our adjacent side, divided by our hypotenuse, which is 8. Now, this is where I did not want you to be afraid of the top list, because how do we figure out what cosine of 30 is? Well, that is where the list comes in. Let's just scroll up really quick, and we're going to take a look at our list. we're looking for cosine of 30 degrees. And look at that. We have cosine of 30 degrees right there. Cosine of 30 degrees equals square root of 3 over 2. So we're going to replace cosine of 30 with square root of 3 over 2. Let's scroll back down. We are going to replace the whole cosine of 30 degrees, and we're going to say square root of 3 over 2. We just replaced the entire thing, and now this is going to equal x over 8. At this point, we can just solve for x. How do we solve for x? We can multiply by 8 on either side. Times 8 times 8. What does this equal here? I'm going to write the rest of it right up there. This is going to be 8 square root of 3 over 2. When we multiplied 8 onto the other side, it just went onto the top of the fraction. What is left over onto the right side? That's just going to be x. This usually is where we end, but 8 and 2 are divisible. They do have a greatest common factor, so this is going to be 4 over 1, or we can say 4 square root 3 equals x. This is our answer. This is our side length. This is how we want you to do it. We want an exact answer for this. We don't want a decimal. We want an exact answer for this. Now, let's go down to the guided practice here. There's a couple of things I want to point out before you give this a shot. We've gone ahead and taken the liberty of writing the rest of this table out. What is this table? Well, here we have each of the values for each of the trig functions. We have sine, cosine, tangent, and then up here would be the degrees, 0, 30, 45, 60, and 90. So if you have sine of 0 degrees, you get 0 divided by 2, which is just 0. Or if you want sine of 30 degrees, you get square root of 1 over 2, which is just going to be 1/2, because square root of 1 is just 1. So that would be 1/2. Or if you want to get crazy with it, let's do cosine of 45 degrees. We'll get square root of 2 over 2. Now, I want to show you how to make this table, and it's actually really easy to make this table, but I want to show you in another video, so I'm going to put the link right over here, or if I'm not very good at doing that yet, it'll just be in the description of this video. But there will be a whole video that is dedicated to showing you just how to make this table, and it will be amazing. So let us use this table with this guided practice. Now, I have taken the liberty of moving the table just a little bit down. We'll just have to scroll down really quick to take a gander at it, to use the values in it. But right now, I would like you to pause the video. I want you to pause the video and try out these two, 3a and 3b, for yourself. It is really important that you try these things for yourself, because then you know what you need to work on. So pause the video and then we'll get started. All right, I hope that you did not ignore my last words, and we're going to get started on 3a and 3b. So first of all, we are working with this angle 60 right over here, and we're trying to find x. So I like to label the sides first. If angle 60 is our angle, that means our x is going to be our adjacent side. So I'm going to say ADJ. That's going to be our adjacent. 14 is going to be our hypotenuse. That side is always going to be our hypotenuse. Now, if we're trying to use our hypotenuse and our adjacent side, what do we use? Well, again, let's write out our SOHCAHTOA. So that's going to be SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA. Oh, look at that. It's going to be cosine again, because again, we're using our adjacent and our hypotenuse. So let's use cosine. We're going to say, let's use blue. we're going to say cosine of 60 degrees is going to equal adjacent over hypotenuse. Well, what is our adjacent? That is going to be x divided by our hypotenuse, which is going to be 14. If you're confused where this came from us using this function here. Cosine of theta equals adjacent over the hypotenuse. We get the adjacent over the hypotenuse because the ka in SOHCAHTOA. Now, let's move on here. Let's see what cosine of 60 degrees is. We're going to scroll down here and we're going to find our cosine and we're going to find our 60 degrees and just kind of match them up, and look at this. It is square root of 1 over 2. Now, square root of 1 is just 1, so we're going to use 1, or 1/2 really. So let's scroll back up and use 1/2. So cosine of 60 is 1/2. So we are going to say 1/2 equals x over 14. Now, this is something you can solve. We multiply both sides by 14, and what does that equal? This is going to be 14 over 2, or 7. So we will say, actually, let's write that out. 14 over 2 equals x, and you can also say 7 equals x. So 7 is our missing side value. Our adjacent side is 7. Let's use the same technique with our other triangle here. Now, this is very, very important that you're able to see where the hypotenuse is. Let's look. Well, the right angle is over here. That means the hypotenuse is on this side. So let's also find out what is this 10, because we're going to be using this 10 here. Well, I seem to be able to draw a line all the way across the triangle just to get to it. If we remember from our last video, that means that this is going to be our opposite side. So we'll call that OPP, opposite. And X is our hypotenuse. So we'll label that as HYP again. Now, if we're using our opposite and hypotenuse side, which trig function deals with opposite and hypotenuse? SOHCAHTOA. Well, it seems sine deals with opposite and hypotenuse. So let's use sine. Let's see, what color do we want to use? Let's use purple. We're going to use sine, and this is going to derive from sine of theta equaling opposite over the hypotenuse. So sine of, what is our angle equal? Well, it seems it equals 45. So we're going to use sine of 45, and that's going to equal opposite, which is 10, over our hypotenuse, which is x. Now, let's see. Sine of 45, that has an actual value to it. So let's scroll down here and see what sine of 45 is. Sine of 45 equals square root of 2 over 2. So let's use square root of 2 over 2. That's what this is going to equal. Square root of 2 over 2. That's going to equal 10 over x. Some people get really afraid when they see a variable on the bottom of a fraction, but this is where cross multiplication comes in handy. You can cross multiply here. So let's cross multiply here. We're going to take the x times the square root of 2 over 2 and the 2 times the 10 and put them on opposite sides of the equal sign. So let's do that now. This is going to be x square root of 2 equals 10 times 2, which is going to be equal to 20. The next step would be solving for x, so we're going to divide both sides by square root of 2, and that is going to equal x equals 20 over square root of 2. Now remember from the last video, if I have a radical on the bottom, I want to rationalize the denominator. Now I can do that by multiplying the top and the bottom by square root of 2. X is going to equal 20 times square root of 2 over 2. Now, the 2 comes in because when you have two square roots that have the same number inside, the squares or the square roots actually cancel. I can actually divide 20 and 2 by each other. That will be 10 over 1. So our last and final step is the fact that this is going to be 10 square root of 2. Just like that. Now, this one was a little bit more involved than the previous one, but most of this stuff you should have learned how to do in Algebra 2 already, and if not, then just review this video and get really good at this, because this is about as hard as it's going to get when it comes to this type of algebra. So, our answer for our missing side is 10 square root of 2.